Hey everyone, welcome to this interview with Tom Allsopp from TPA Tennis. Really excited to have Tom on because as I was telling him before I hit the record button, I'm a big fan of his videos. In particular, watching many of his serve videos. You know, as you all know, I've been working on my serve quite a bit lately. And so Tom's advice has been fantastic and eye-opening. So first off, Tom, I want to welcome you to the podcast, and thanks a lot for joining. Yeah, of course. It's really an honor. So yeah, I just figured we'd run through a bunch of technique questions, you know, because obviously that's one of the big things. You know, I feel like, of course, strategy is something where you can implement fairly quickly usually and get instant results. But then technique is something where it really raises your ceiling of how high you can go with your tennis potential. So yeah, how does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, fantastic. So, yeah, pretty basic one, but you know, for me, my forehand is my biggest weapon. You know, playing like 5-0 leagues in former college, so that's my shot that I just try to hit over and over again. But I was wondering, you know, from your perspective, what are you seeing as the most common mistakes that amateur tennis players are making with their forehand technique?
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like for me, everyone's at a different place. I know that's not really giving you an answer, but for me, as a tennis coach, I'm just working with each individual, and everyone's just at such a different starting point. So I think that's what can be challenging watching YouTube videos and trying to figure out how to improve your forehand, because everyone just does it so different. So I think you have to figure out how you play the shot, like what your style of forehand is, and then just look to make little incremental adjustments to allow you to control the ball better. Instead of going down the road of like copying Alcaraz or copying, you know, these kind of players. So maybe one of the issues would be just trying to do too much and trying to copy a stroke that is kind of beyond your current skill level, to where you don't fully execute it, then you develop bad habits and, you know, you lose control of the tennis ball. So personally, I mean, this is going to make a crazy soundbite, but I think my forehand is better modeled than your Sinners or your Alcaraz, just because I keep it quite simple. You know, so sometimes what I'm trying to do is just show people a simple forehand model that they can maybe try and copy instead of copying some of the guys who are obviously at elite levels, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because obviously, you know, they're also physically superior to us, and you know, different body shapes and stuff. And going back to what you said about everybody is different. So yeah, that does make sense. So you mentioned that you have a more simple forehand, which is, you know, something that I think you know, I'm trying to do with my backhand, simplify it. But when you say yours is more simple, like what are the elements that make it, or how do you make it more simple?
So pretty much with every shot, I just try and think about moving my body in a sort of biomechanically sound way. I kind of think about it like if I was hitting a forehand with a racket that was 200 times heavier, could I still do my forehand? Which would mean just kind of getting it up to the top, just letting it swing, just kind of allowing things to work smoothly, as opposed to me manipulating where the racket's going and how fast I move it. So I think one thing that's interesting is I thought about this one. There's a video of Rublev and Dimitrov playing with old tennis rackets on red clay. I don't know if you've seen that video on YouTube, but they both have this forehand that is similar to mine, where it's just very simple. And they both look, even though I'd say in real life, like when they're playing a match, they don't really look that similar, you know, Dimitrov and Rublev. But when they're just playing nice, easy, simple rallies with an old racket, they look pretty similar. It's just that when these guys have mastered tennis and they're looking for like an extra 5% here and there, or like an extra 10 mile an hour on the forehand, they all do something that's kind of unique to get that extra, to maximize, you know, racket speed and just to get the most out of their forehand. So then we see technique that looks quite unique. to each individual. But I think if they're all just rallying simply up the middle, they're using pretty similar fundamentals for the most part, which is, again, back to my forehand, is just what I'm trying to do, is just get it to the top, just let it swing in a way that I'm not trying to manipulate the racket too much. And what you'd see with my forehand is I'm not going to have as much lag as someone like, well, any of the pros really. And that's partly because I just don't think I have the skill to time it. So I just kind of stay in my lane when it comes to how fast I move the racket, you know. I can hit it a little faster, but then I lose a lot of control. So it's not worth it to me.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Yeah. So I guess like the more you try to lag, is it right to say that it becomes more of like a wristy shot and then you have to time it better? Or is it like the sudden acceleration of that type of lag, shot that, you know, makes it more or less consistent or something else?
Yeah, there's essentially more separation pretty much with everything. So, you know, you got the kinetic chain or coordination chain, as I like to call it. And the body's moving in this sequence where for the pros hitting 100-mile-an-hour forehand, everything's getting separated and ultimately the racket's getting left behind to then catch up really fast, which, yes, it will then kind of lay that wrist back and that will then release into the shot, which gives you power, but also makes it more challenging to time. Yeah,
it makes sense. One thing with that though is I'm wondering now with like how do grips impact that? Like, let's say if you have more of a like towards the Western grip, like do you have to have the lag? Can you actually not lag it as much, or do you need to lag it for that type of grip?
Yeah, you probably have to you have to have a few more moving parts than if you had a continental grip where pretty much the racket and the arm can kind of stay very connected.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you move around it, you're going to, for most people, they're going to need to kind of supinate and pronate a little bit more through the shot. But some people can just kind of keep the arm relatively straight as they're coming through and kind of limit some of the movement. I would just say that, yes, there'd probably be a little bit more movement with, you know, lagging and creating different angles as you go towards semi-Western, but you still have to be able to manage how fast you move in the racket, you know, because if you're just rallying in the service box, you're not going to be lagging, you know, you're not going to be around, right? Like, so you're going to have to control how much you get this separation.
Yeah, makes sense, Tom. So if you were to be talking to a student, I mean, you can use me as one, and you were to break down the forehand into like different, maybe, I guess, stages to work on or sections or something like that. I was wondering like how you would break down like the key sections or elements of a forehand.
Again, it depends who I'm working with, because, and you say working with you, but I've not actually seen you play.
Yeah.
Do you have videos out there?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I should have sent it to you. Your eyes would be burning. No, I'm kidding.
Obviously, if I'm working with a beginner, it's about getting the racket right behind the ball and just making sure that you give yourself the best chance of striking the ball clean. One of my most common go-tos would be to finish with the back of the racket next to your head, because that just trains the arm to just gradually and effortlessly rotate through the shot. So it's a very efficient way of moving the racket all the way to the finish. When it comes to the beginning of the stroke, again, it depends on skill level, because the better you get, the more you would take it up high and get a bit of a loop going, use momentum and gravity to drop the racket but I'm always going to start with, once you get past that stage of getting the racket behind the ball and making contact and getting it in, I'm always going to look to build a bit more of a smooth, coordinated motion where you're just moving the racket over a bigger distance and then moving it a little faster and a little bit faster. So it's just like a steady evolution towards getting more of your body involved. It would kind of be like if I was teaching you to use an axe to chop down a tree, you would start off, if you've never used an axe before, just taking it back a little bit and just trying to strike that tree in the right place. But the better you got, the more you would get more of your body involved. You would take the axe further away from your body, higher, and get a bit more momentum, and just generate a little bit more speed. And hopefully you're still striking that tree in the right place. No good if you're doing that and you're chopping it all over the place. So the better your timing gets, the more you can just use more of your body and move the racket over a bigger distance, depending on the shot. Depending on the shots. If Kyrgios is serving at you, you're not going to want to do that.
Yeah, that's true. When you just talked about the axe, Tom, that reminded me of there was a video, and I can't remember the exact object, where it might have been an axe, or was something that you like really heavy that you were showing like for a serve movement.
I did use an axe. I did use.
It was an axe. Oh my gosh. Glad I asked you that. Sorry, I have horrible puns. But anyway, and then I actually got a hammer that was, in my closet over here, and I was kind of like trying to use that as an axe, and so it kind of like more naturally move my the motion for the serve, which was pretty cool. Although one time I kind of slightly nicked my head, but it's fine with the hammer.
Don't sue me. There's a There's a slight disclaimer on that video. That
there is.
Don't try this at home. But the point of that, and I usually do it with a ball tube. You can put a couple of balls in it. There's people will have seen the exercise where you put a couple of tennis balls in a sock.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that.
I've done that.
When you're doing that, you can kind of just wave it around. It kind of nice. It's nice to keep it moving, and certain element of like a coordinated movement when you can move that around without the balls like hitting you in the back or whatever. But when you use something heavy, it's kind of guiding you rather than you guiding it. And if you listen to it, especially when I did it with an axe that was really heavy, in order to do that correctly, you have to move your body in a biomechanically sound way. You can't start like lifting it or changing directions. You have to just move it smoothly around your body, and you'll do things like the drop will happen at the right time. For me, the supination and then the rotation of the arm, the pronation through to the finish. These things they become pretty easy for the student to understand, because you don't want to do it any other way. You have that tube in your hand. You can feel how comfortable it is when you rotate, and how uncomfortable it is if you do something that's not that. So I do like to use that those training aids a lot.
Yeah, I really like that exercise. Definitely something y'all should try. Maybe with the ball tube. I feel like Vikings must have had really good serves with all the axe movements. But anyway, another horrible joke. Sorry. When you mentioned
if you're throwing it, a lot of that stuff on my channel. If you're doing axe throwing, which is big in Alabama where I'm at right now.
Is it?
But I think they do it like with two in the head. But when you're throwing something, I mean, that's really helps people again to understand the sequence, how to move your body in the right sequence. And people often say, well, the serve's not a throw motion, but for me it is. And it's obviously you have to adapt it a little bit, but again, all the sequences are there. And you could say that throwing an American football, I have to say American, throwing an American football and a baseball is different. Those two things don't look the same, but they're still throwing motions. And a serve would look a little different than those two, but the fundamentals are still there. So I'm often just helping players to understand how to adapt what they naturally do with the throw into their serve mechanics, and then make the little tweaks to where it becomes more of a serve. But for most people, that's super helpful.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, is it too simple to say that, the serve is just a throwing motion, but you're just throwing up, or is that pretty much it?
Yeah, I'd say that'll get you close. That'll get you close to it. I mean, I do think that's that's where I start, and then I kind of look what's happening from there. But yeah, even when you throw in, the arm still, pronates through. So yeah, I think that's fair. But everyone's going to be a little bit different, so it's not like you just kind of, it's not the final stage, where you like just base it on a throw, but you do that to get people to a certain understanding of how to use their body in the right sequence at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
But again, just going back to, because I've already said this for the forehand, but I think the problem people run into when they're trying to learn the serve, especially watching YouTube videos, is there's an idea that there's a right way of serving, and the right technique, it just depends so much on the player's skill level and their goals, like what they're trying to achieve right now with the serve. Because if I was to throw a ball to someone 6 foot away, 10 feet away, my technique would be, elbow in front, just very simple throwing motion. But that's not wrong, right? You wouldn't say that's wrong. It's wrong if I want to strike out a baseball player. That ain't going to get it done. But it's not wrong. It's not technically flawed. All you're trying to do then is get more of your body involved. So if I want to throw it, let's say the length of a tennis court, I'm going to turn a little bit more, get my elbow back, use more of my body, and the mechanics are going to change. So I get a lot of pushback sometimes on my YouTube channel where I'm teaching someone to improve their coordination chain, get the body moving in a more coordinated sequence, but I'm allowing them to stick with a Eastern grip, and people are like,
I remember
you got to use continental grip, but you don't. I feel like there's so many things wrong with that. You're basically not appreciating the individual that you're working with, because if you give the continental grip to about half of the population playing tennis, they're going to really struggle. They're going to really struggle to use that grip. So for me, I allow people to use an Eastern grip, do simple, basic, fundamental service motions until they can achieve their goal, because people might just want to get the ball in court. They might want to be playing a 3-0 match where they're just trying to, win the next match or get on the team or get on the high school team. So I'm just trying to show them how they can do a more coordinated motion that helps them to control their body, control the tennis ball. And then over time, then you start getting more of your body involved and moving more towards a continental grip to achieve things like getting more spin. But there's just this idea of there being one way of serving, and it just depends so much on the player you're working with. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? I didn't explain that great, but we can.
No. I think that's totally right. I mean, first off, the different players have different goals. Maybe the 3-5s, they want to just win as much as possible and not necessarily have like a 100-mile-per-hour serve. And yeah, I think you're right. It also can be pretty discouraging if you switch to the continental. Like I've seen that actually at camps. Like the students, they try continental and then they just basically like get they don't really enjoy practicing the serve anymore because they shank a bunch. And
Right.
so yeah, no, I think that makes total sense.
Because even the way we're talking right now seems like, well, if these players have goals of just being average at tennis and just winning the next match, then we'll do this. But if we got someone who wanted to be really good, would have to change it to a continental grip. But I still wouldn't. If I had one of these kids that you just mentioned at camp and they said, I want to win Wimbledon, I wouldn't say, well, you need a continental grip today. I would try to help them to be better than they were 2 minutes ago, which often is helping them to move their body in I keep saying this, but a more coordinated sequence. They'll develop that throw motion, just move the body, move the racket around their body in a smoother way. And then as they look to do more things like put more spin on the ball, things like that, and you say, hey, this grip's going to help you to achieve your new goal of putting more spin on this serve. Once you've got that throw motion where the arm is starting to rotate, then the continental grip becomes far easier to apply to that motion. So I would only move one step at a time. The thing is, if the kid had any chance of even playing Wimbledon, never mind winning it, he would move through the steps extremely quick, right? Like anyone with the skill to play Wimbledon would find that I've told them, hey, just do this. Like you can use your Eastern grip for this next one, stay on the floor, rotate your body, do this, do that. They're going to have that down in like 2 minutes. By the end of the session, they're going to be using a continental grip because it's the right time for them to use it to do what they're now trying to do with the ball. So just evolving your tennis game is really important, because if you start taking someone who's not got a coordinated motion, then you say, hey, this is the right grip. This is the grip that Federer uses. They now start doing really weird things to make that grip work. And now you actually develop bad habits. So you don't actually get to, people say if I'm not teaching a continental grip, I'm instilling bad habits in players, people making, doing the serve wrong. But it's actually moving towards a continental grip before the player is ready that will cause people to do really weird things and develop bad habits.
Yeah, totally. And it's just, like too many things to work on at once, I think. But, yeah, that's great stuff. One thing, Tom, kind of just going back to the forehand, if you don't mind, one thing I was curious about that I meant to follow up on is, and I know this may not be super helpful for those who are trying to simplify, but you mentioned that some of the pros, or many of the pros, are just adding like an extra 5% to their strokes to get more power. I was wondering like what that might be for anyone that's curious, like examples of that.
Well, I mean, you can literally just go out there and just see if you can crank it up. I mean, this is what golfers do all the time, is work on their swing speed, right? And they sacrifice where the ball goes, and they get some kind of swing speed radar, and they just go as fast as they can possibly go. And then, they reach new heights with club speed and ball speed, and then they try and figure out how to keep it in play. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just getting on court and just trying to increase your speed is, you can do that. You can do that. I don't know if it's the smartest way. It depends, again, what your goal is, because I can hit it a lot harder, but I choose to stay in my lane and control the ball, because I feel like going 10 miles an hour but losing control is no good.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's things like staying loose, being able to feel. It's hard for me to explain now, but I've done a lot of videos on transferring weight. So if you can focus on what your lower body's doing and transfer weight at the right time and feel like all of your body is moving in this coordinated sequence, and then being, having this balance between being loose enough but firm enough is really what it's about. And that's quite tricky for some people. Some people are too tight to get any speed, and then they loosen up things like holding the racket just all loose with like the hand, like digits hanging off the racket in order to be loose. But it's usually the other way around. You want to be kind of loose with your body, and as you come into that contact, you'll be pretty firm with the hand. So it's really just trying to understand how to move your body, really. And I think a lot of people run into trouble when they think tennis is unique in that sense. Like, there's nothing that unique about tennis. If you throw a ball or skim a stone, or you're using the same sequence to do all of this stuff, even if you're doing the acts that we spoke about, like the sequences are all kind of the same. So if you kind of improve your athleticism in that sense, that can help to get more of your body working in the right sequence at the right time. And just ultimately that's going to help you to move the racket a little bit quicker, because it's going to come through, your body's going to be being used in a way that gets the racket to lag behind and fire.
Yeah.
But I think, sorry.
No.
Yes, I've done things like the throw motion on the forehand, and that's, it's not about it looking exactly like a throw, it's the sequence, So I think people get too caught up in positions, start here, drop it there, pat the dog, this, that, and the other. I would much prefer to see people using athletic movements that they use in everyday life to like throw something or, swing a baseball or whatever it is, swing a baseball bat, and just apply that to tennis.
Yeah, good stuff, Tom. So one thing that I have struggled with quite a bit, and I remember maybe it was Rick Macy that I interviewed that talked about this, but it's timing the racket drop with the pushing up of the legs, because my racket drop is something that actually is, it's another aspect. I've been kind of like bending the wrist a bit too much on the racket drop. So now I'm just trying to, drop the forearm so it's more natural of a drop. But then practicing that racket drop so much has now caused me to drop the racket way too early. So I was wondering, for many amateurs, probably most that don't have this timing correctly, besides, like the axe drill, what are some ways that we can improve that timing of the pushing up of the legs with the initiating the racket drop?
Well, I wouldn't actually do either of those. So I don't. Yeah, sometimes you have to focus on where someone's racket drops to because they might not be dropping it lower than the ball or whatever. But I don't like the idea of purposefully dropping the racket. My friend has a great analogy where he says, just get the racket to the top of the roller coaster and just let it fall. And if you let it fall beneath the tennis ball and then, you carry that energy all the way up through the hip, then to me, that's a great racket drop. You might have to control which way the strings are facing or whatever, there's always some tweaks that I don't know how that's going to look for each individual. But once you start trying to put it into that position, it becomes a bit rigid. And for me, that should be a very smooth, dynamic movement where you're just passing through the pat the dog position. You shouldn't.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom, for this. I actually meant for the serve. I should have clarified.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, the funny thing is, like, what you're saying there is exactly the same for the forehand, right? Like lowering the racket, putting it in that pat the dog position, and what was the other thing you said?
The racket drop was one, and the other was like timing the pushing up of the legs.
Timing the legs. So I would say it's the same for the serve and the forehand, where I wouldn't think about dropping the racket on the serve or the forehand, and I wouldn't think about pushing up with the legs as much as rotating. Now, on the forehand, this is going to make more sense. I would think about getting the racket to the top and just allowing it to drop. And then I would think about transferring weight to rotate the body and to use the legs in that way instead of pushing up. But yes, the serve, the racket drop should be happening as the elbow is thrown forwards. That's the way I like to think about it. So that's when and how the racket should be dropping, as opposed to sort of an independent drop down the back. And yeah, timing. Okay, so this is going to get a little advanced here. So
no problem.
I spoke to someone the other day, someone who helps me with my video analysis program. He's brilliant, called Slavi. And we're talking about how people mistime their jump. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Like you when to push up relative to the racket drop and stuff. We think that when someone is mistiming their jump, is down to them not being able to supinate and pronate the arm well enough. So looking at hundreds of people who have worked with even last couple of years that on the way down as they're striking the ball, it's usually because they're just kind of coming at it like a very linear swing where the racket might be open as they're approaching the ball, and the racket won't be pronating through the contact. And because you don't have a lot of power coming through the arm, it's almost like you want to jump and kind of fall on top of the ball to use your body in that way. So for me, I would always get someone to stay on the ground, load that back foot, transfer to the front foot, just like if you were throwing a ball, and then work on the supination and pronation of the arm. And once you've got that down, the jumps tends to kind of fix itself a little bit. But one step in between that would be to feel like as you're staying on the ground, you are pushing up off your front leg and synchronizing that with the timing of the contact. So if you're someone who is struggling to time the jump to hit the ball, which is a lot of people, I would say stay on the floor, work on your transfer of weight and your arm rotation, and try to time the push off of the front foot to time that with the contact of the ball. Because for most people who are on the way down as they're jumping and serving, they are usually mistiming that movement even when they're staying on the floor. So I would work on the timing there, and then you start to apply a bit more energy as you're coming off that front foot, and then you start to get a little bit of a jump into the contact. The issue is when you think about it as a jump, then you start hitting it like a volleyball serve or something, where it's just like a jump and then a hit, as opposed to a natural, you're getting off the floor because you're just using extra energy. You have this desire to go up and get it. It's not like a jump and a hit. So hopefully that made sense. There's a lot of stuff in there, but
yeah, no, it's good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get to the core of it. Well, arguably the core, but so it's really like practicing that, you said supination, pronation movement. So what's the best way to really practice that? Is it like the axe or ball tube, or like any other thoughts on that, if that's accurate?
Yeah, probably should start mentioning the axe.
Love that axe.
But yeah, leave the axe alone. But yeah, the ball tube will that drop down the back with the ball tube becomes really like you're gonna feel it because you use the weight to drop it down your back, and then as you come out of that, you'll be in a supinated position, and then the pronation will be will make sense. So there's also the throwing motion. There's, depending on what element you are struggling with, sometimes I'll have people just hit the ball with the edge of the racket. So if you can hit the ball over the fence or over the net with the edge of the racket, that is supination. And most people open up their strings because that's, again, we're talking about skill level. Like, you're not going to do that if you're a beginner. Like, you're going to face the strings to the ball and control the ball that way. But the better you get, the more you will supinate the arm and lag the racket. And, you need confidence and timing to do that. What most people do is they get into the trophy position and then they face the strings to the tennis ball to guarantee a cleaner hit. Yeah. So having someone try to frame the ball, leading edge of the racket, and get used to doing that puts them in a better supinated position. Then obviously once you've done that for a little bit, you just try and open up the strings and pronate into the contact. And when it comes to the follow through, the pronation on the follow through, I really just try and get people to make sure that when they finish the shot, the front of the racket is kind of facing their leading leg. So the pronation, it doesn't have to happen like in a blink of an eye up here. It can just kind of be a bit more of a gradual thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're the kind of tricks I do most frequently.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, it's just, It's tough, Tom. I wish I could rewind time because, as a junior playing, a bunch of tournaments, like my mindset was always just like be as consistent as possible. So unfortunately, I kind of developed on the serve where I was kind of, doing like kind of a pancake thing, second serve, especially just kind of bending the wrist back and getting a very shallow racket drop to get the ball in. And yeah, even though I was able to play, college tennis and do well, I mean, that serve was something that was never really a weapon for me. So I've been spending a lot of time and, taking some lessons recently again to really work on all the elements. So some really great tips in there to try to make the racket drop more natural. Also, on the second serve, I've been working on my kick serve, and I feel like, one of the biggest, things to help with that is really the toss location and contact point and whatnot. So I was wondering if you have any particular tips to kind of somewhat quickly, I guess, to help people generate that kick serve.
Okay, so first of all, I get a lot of people who are trying to hit a kick serve, and they're not ready yet. And I'm not saying that's you, obviously, but like an 8-year-old came to me the other day, I'm trying to hit a kick serve. It's like,
it's tough.
So for me, you got to be able to slice the ball. All right, you got to be able to hit a slice serve. That's step one. Just getting around the side of it and making the ball spin, and just seeing that ball spin. But then, if you just start slicing the ball upwards, you start to get a bit of topspin. And then if you slice the ball even more up, you get more topspin, and eventually it starts to kick. So all it is slicing the ball upwards. That's all the topspin serve is. And if you think about it that way, you can just evolve it from a slice to a kick. Whereas you go from a flat to a kick, people seem to mess that up a little bit for obvious reasons. So I would, in order to slice the ball up, you have to be able to get the racket up the ball, which means that the contact can't be too far to the right, because that would be tough to get the racket moving up the ball. You would need the ball toss a little bit more to sort of, I kind of think about it landing on my forehead if I'm throwing it up and kind of looking up at the ball, kind of somewhere like that, because that's putting me in a position where I can now get the racket to the inside of the angle of my arm and really brush up that ball. And an important thing to understand is you got to let the ball drop, because if you don't let the ball drop, you can't get up the ball. If you're at full stretch, there is no way you can get the racket to make the ball spin forwards, right? So ball has to be a little bit more on top of you. You have to let it drop. You have to think about slicing upwards on the ball, and that's about it. But the other thing that's going to make this work is you got to have a strong continental grip, because that's the only way that the racket would be to the inside of the angle of your arm, right? You need the racket to be coming way to the inside of the arm to be able to get the racket to be able to come up the ball. If you are someone who holds it in what I call like down the lifeline of the hand, so basically the racket is an extension of the forearm, you won't be able to get the racket to that angle to brush up the ball. Does that make sense? I'm trying to think about this for people listening.
Appreciate that.
I don't know if I have explained that well, but yeah, you need that strong continental grip. And I would say that even when you're hitting a first serve, if you go watch a Federer video, you will see first serve or second, but at the point of contact, his racket is going to be, way to the inside of the angle of the forearm. And you can get away with a first serve not doing that, just having the racket as an extension of the forearm. But the more you're trying to hit a kick, the more that's going to hurt you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's really good. And then I guess on the converse side, especially because, you've emphasized how important the slice serve is. Of course, it's such a huge weapon in our arsenal. Stretch the returner out wide with the forehand. That's a tough shot. But maybe a couple tips on, hitting an effective slice serve. What's most important there?
Yeah, and I don't think there's just a slice and a kick. You know, there's a whole spectrum, because you're talking about, which is why I talk about a topspin or a kick serve being slicing up the ball. You can come right around it and go huge, you know, slice out wide, or you could just slice up a little bit so the ball is rotating. You know, it's rotating kind of around, but it's rotating forwards a little bit as well to make it a second serve. You need a kick serve for a second serve. You don't always see these pros hitting like huge kick serves. Like, you know, they all can, right? Like they all can hit this nasty kick, but quite often they just put in a little bit of topspin on what is essentially a slice serve. But yeah, you're just trying to come around the ball, and I would just play around with it, of just trying to hit the edge of it. And when some people can't slice at all, like there's no spin on the ball, I would kind of tell them to try to frame the ball over the side fence to the right, you know, if they're right-handed, and just miss that a little bit, and then that's going to give you some, you know, it's going to give you that spin. Yeah. But the difficulty people run into is they don't pronate the arm after they've made that contact, because they continue on that motion. So now they have a chopping motion. And if you're doing a chopping motion, you're not really efficiently moving that racket around you. So I would just say topspin or slice or whatever serve, you want to brush across, but then again, naturally allow the racket to rotate around you.
Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, we've covered a lot on the serve, which is, you know, as you can tell, I'm, you know, really into, with the backhand, and maybe let's go with the two-handed backhand. I guess first off, is it true that it should primarily be a left-handed shot for, at least for, like, you know, like for most beginners, intermediates, or do you have like any other views on that? For right-handers, of course.
Well, Andre Agassi, thinks it's a right-handed shot.
Right.
He thinks about extending that right hand through, and I think what's the YouTube guy who's really good at tennis, Tennis HQ? What's his name?
Carousel. Yeah,
I believe he thinks similar. I think he thinks a lot about driving the left arm. I'm not sure about that, but I watched one video where he was helping someone. So I think everyone's a little bit different. And I think no one seems to have that windshield wiper non-dominant hand. The only person who was kind of close to that was Nadal, because he was trying to probably hit more topspin on his two-handed than most, but he's also right-handed. So that right hand was really dominant on that shot, to where it kind of did look a little bit more like a forehand. But yeah, I think so. I think everyone's a little bit different, but I think it's important to feel like both hands are able to kind of do a job, and to be able to feel like there's not one that's kind of overpowering the other. Personally, like, I just like to kind of feel like I can use a bit more of the right, or I can use a bit more of the left. You know, if I'm hooking it cross court or something like that, then the dexterity of the left hand is important. So in a way, hitting that left-handed drill, or not, I should say, non-dominant hand forehand that you'll have seen, you know, is what a lot of coaches use to train the backhand. It's not so much that it's exactly what the left hand is going to do, but it's useful to train it, because a lot of people just aren't very ambidextrous. So you're training the left hand to actually have a bit of skill.
Yeah, right.
That you can use it. It's not so much the path, because most of the time the racket won't, as I keep saying, it won't have that windshield wiper finish where the side of the racket you've hit the ball with is facing your opponent. It's more sort of on edge, the racket, as you extend towards your opponent.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting because my coach is having me change my grip, and what my grips are right now, or my right hand is kind of like a weak continental, so it's a bit more shifted to the right, and I'm right-handed, and then my left hand, it's a bit more underneath. So like, I guess if I'm describing it right, like my left hand, it like now he wants it to be more of like a Eastern like forehand on like the more flat, like bigger bevel. Whereas before it was like a bit underneath, bit more, under to the left. So it was kind of more of like a spinnier grip, I guess. But then I was kind of just keeping my arms a bit more bent and trying to whip up and hit topspin. But I had a lot of trouble. For example, with like short court, which your title is so funny. It said, I think mini tennis is just an advanced form of pickleball or something like that. But yeah, so I've been having a lot of trouble just doing short court. Like I feel like I can't get the ball in the court. And so he's having me have more of a continental grip on my right hand, and then my left hand shifting it to be kind of like an Eastern forehand, basically. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm just bringing that background up selfishly to you to see if you have any thoughts on that at all.
Yeah, it's important to understand people listening, because how you, like the way you're describing your right hand is around the front of the racket is how I would describe it, right? So you got a slight forehand grip with the right hand, or you did have. So your left hand's behind. So you're going to be using your left hand quite a bit, because if you were to take your left hand off the racket and your right hand is still in a slight Eastern forehand grip, you're not going to be very strong. Like you wouldn't want to hit a backhand like that. Certainly not a topspin. You could hit a drop. You could hit a drop shot with that grip, but you're so far around the front that it's going to rely on your left hand doing a lot of the work. And a lot of people do this because the first shot they will learn is a forehand where you're slightly behind the back of the racket. So if I'm working with someone who's a beginner, the first grip change that often happens naturally is get the hand behind the racket on the forehand. So you're hitting forehands and it feels like your hand's behind. Maybe you put a little topspin. Now you go to the backhand. You don't want to do a grip change because that's difficult. So now you've got your right hand still in a forehand grip and your left hand behind, and you can hit shots like that. What tends to happen is your right elbow gets a bit jammed to your body. So I don't know if that's kind of how you hit the shot, but it'll be hard to kind of finish with that right elbow high. So there won't be that extension, and the left hand will kind of be hucking a little bit.
Yeah.
So ideally I would have the right hand on top, kind of like in a continental, which will allow, then put the left hand somewhere behind, not too extreme. And you should be able to kind of feel like both hands are comfortable and able to kind of work together so that you get the extension on the follow through. Drive both arms through. Yeah.
Sounds good. And then I guess, similar question as I asked is on the forehand, but we seem to struggle a lot more on the back end than the forehand. So just wondering what maybe were like a couple of the biggest mistakes that you see players make, and how can we just simplify the stroke more?
I kind of like the same concept that we've talked about on the forehand and serve, where you kind of use a bit of momentum, use kind of gravity, get it to the top and just kind of let it, feel like you're letting it drop and you're carrying that momentum into the strike instead of putting it in places, So I'm kind of looking for that smooth motion. If you do that, then you get that little bit of wrist drop that you see with the dominant hand with the pros. If you allow the racket to drop and then it'll kind of whip into the ball a little bit. But yeah, I feel like the backhand is obviously you get a lot of different techniques with the forehand and the serve, but I just feel like the backhands, there's so many guys and girls doing like different things that just kind of, they just make it work. That it seems like a bit of a unique shot that I really feel like I just work with each individual from where they're at. I don't really have this thing that I go back to. If someone's got a forehand grip, I sometimes just keep it. If they're around the back, I'll keep it. I'll just kind of work with what they're doing, and I'm basically looking at what's the problem in terms of the result of the shot. Like kid the other day, his wrists were in a position where he just couldn't hit the ball across court. So now we're making an adjustment to figure out how to achieve the goal, as opposed to just working on the technique just because I think there's a better way of doing it, which is generally kind of how I go about coaching every shot. You look at what the issue is, you look at what they are struggling to achieve, and then you make a technical adjustment to help them to execute the shot a little bit more effectively. But certainly on the backhand, it just seems like each person's a little bit unique with how they go about doing it.
Yeah, it makes sense, Tom. And so this is more of well, they're all technique questions that I've asked you, but this one is kind of specific. So I don't know if maybe the answer is it depends, or it's based on your grip. But when you take that racket back for the two-hander, I mean, are your arms supposed to be relatively straight, like the right arm being pretty much straight and the left arm being just slightly bent, or is there some other, should it be bent more than that, or like does it just depend on other factors?
I guess the issues that I run into would be people extending the arms too far away from their body.
Okay.
Kind of to the, as if they're right-handed, to the left of them.
Yeah.
Because what I'd want to see is roughly just taking your ready position and just turning your shoulders and getting the arms up kind of towards the back fence. You don't want to kind of stick your arms out to the side, because running like that is pretty weird.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas when you're back there, you it's a bit more comfortable. But once you turn your shoulders and you've extended your arms out a little bit, I would just say in general, you don't want anything to lock. So
Okay.
I would be on any shot. I don't think any body part should ever be, it's okay to straighten a little bit, but you don't want your arms to be completely locked out. So that would be the only thing I would be looking out for. And I have that issue on my backhand as I'm coming in. Sometimes my left arm will lock, and that's a problem. So, and I know we're talking about backhands here, but I see this a lot on forehands, where instead of, and I just did a video analysis this morning with someone who had a straight arm forehand like Federer. And it's pointing out that Federer, Alcaraz, these players can, yes, they have a straight arm forehand, but it can bend a little bit and it's not locked. So a lot of people, when they're trying this stroke, their arm is locked, not just straight, and it doesn't have the ability to bend and make adjustments. And I would say that the same on the backhand. You just want to look out for that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I don't want to leave out my one-handed backhand, folks. So I was wondering if maybe there's any technical differences that we should be aware of versus when we were talking about the two-hander, or any like specific tips that you've seen have really help people with their one-hander pretty quickly.
Yeah, I've had some successful videos on YouTube where I talk about the one-handed backhand, and people seem to like my advice, but some people think I've got it wrong, which is, again, just allowing the racket to drop, use that momentum. Don't go muscling it around, just let it swing. And also when you get to the finish of the shot, just allow it to naturally do what it wants to do. And, my point in these videos was to allow the arm to naturally bend, as opposed to keeping it completely straight. And Gasquet is a perfect example of that, of finishing with the arm a little bit flexed. But I feel like if you keep your arm too straight, you tend to pull it across your body a little bit. And it can kind of I use the example again of I was swinging a golf club, a putter that had a lot of weight to the end of it. So I'm saying, okay, how do I want to swing this? And I would take it to the top, allow that weight to drop, swing it through with a straight arm. And as I get to the top, allow it to just slowly slow down by just bending my arm slightly. But I think, if you grab something a little heavy, not going to be able to do this with an axe, but if you grab something slightly heavy, you'll probably get that feeling of what I'm talking about, and you'll see what your body wants to do to effortlessly move that around you. There's obviously guys like Wawrinka who would be a little bit straighter, and obviously he's doing it fantastic. But sometimes what happens with that is if you get your arm too straight for too long, you pull it, you slice across it a little bit. So I see a lot of guys hitting kind of side spin one-handed backhands because their arm is a little bit straight. And now what they're doing is they're just like rotating the shoulders and kind of sliding across it. So I always like to think about just allowing the arm to have the maneuverability, but obviously you also don't want to be too bent. You don't want to have a really bent arm throughout the stroke. And some people struggle with that. And then I'll tell them, hey, keep your arm straight. So that's that's how tennis coaching works. Sometimes you telling people extremes, you're telling people completely opposite things, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff. And with volleys, I play a ton of USTA leagues, which is primarily pretty much all doubles. So, one thing that I notice, with myself and, watching my girlfriend as well, who's a former college player also, some things with volleys is that we, mess up is we hit the ball, we volley the ball a bit late. So it's behind us. Also, I've noticed that we don't have our momentum moving forward a lot of the times. Like we kind of like stop where we could be closing more and moving forward and using our bodies. So I was wondering, I guess maybe this is probably mainly the preparation phase that we're maybe not doing the things right, or like our footwork. So I was wondering if, kind of just tips on how to improve that and any other, basic volley advice that you might have.
Well, not to go against what you just said, but I feel like most people need to let the ball come a little bit closer to them. I mean, if you're most people, if you're teaching a beginner, you're teaching like a 6-year-old to hit a volley, you're going to have them way out in front, racket facing the ball and just kind of blocking it way out there. I would say the better you get, the more you're going to move more towards a continental grip. Might just be a little bit off that, but something close. And then you're going to need to volley at the side of you to make that work. Because if you're too far in front, it becomes very awkward to strike that ball. So for me, I'm trying to most of the time get people to volley from a little bit more at the side of them, which then you can still step in and close the net and all that stuff. But for most people, I feel like they reach a little bit too far forwards on the forehand volley. Also the backhand volley too. But if you think about, sometimes you'll hear it called like punching your volleys, which I don't think the motion is anything like a punch. But the concept of, if I was to punch something, I would want the contact to be in the middle of my strike, right? So if I'm punching something, I don't want to be all the way at the end as I'm hitting it, and I don't want to be like doing a Bruce Lee 1-inch punch where I've got no space going into it. So I want to be punching through the object, and that's the same when you're hitting a volley. You want to feel like you're striking that ball, and the contact point is in the middle of your take back and your follow through, which usually means for a lot of people, they have to just let it come to them. You also don't want to be straightening out your arm. You want to kind of have the arm a little bit bent throughout the entire stroke, which again requires you volleying from a little bit more to the side of you. Plus, people who volley more at the side, they create space better, because as the ball is coming into their body, they will turn away from the ball. Whereas people who volley too far in front, if they get jammed, they will rotate into the ball, and their right foot will, if they're right-handed, will cross in front of their left. So I see that a lot. Again, that's just what people do who are a bit too eager to go get it. And although when a ball is coming really fast, we think we're going to be late. If you have bad timing, quite often people overcompensate and are early because they understand the dangers of being late. Before I move on to the backhand volley, do you have any questions on that?
No, I think it's pretty clear. Yeah.
So backhand volley, same thing, where you're trying to strike the ball in the middle of the stroke. So I like to think about it as striking the thing. Even if someone's hitting the ball really hard, I still want to feel like my swing is short, but I'm striking it. I'm connecting in the middle of my stroke. I would just say on both volleys, but on that backhand volley, it's so important to put backspin on a volley, because even though it seems like an advanced thing to do for if someone is new to the game, it just keeps the structure of the stroke right. It keeps the grips make sense, and you can actually support the racket in your hand a lot better when there's backspin on it. Whereas when you face the strings to the ball and to the court, either there's a flipping motion that you'll finish with like the back of the racket facing your opponent as you swing across your body, or the racket will just drop straight down. So just getting a little backspin just keeps that consistent racket face. Plus, as you get better, you need backspin on your volleys to be able to actually control the ball and to maximize being at the net in terms of being able to hit all the different spaces and drop volleys and all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I was trying to just, think about that. And I was even just doing shadow swings now with thinking about that, because I don't think I do that enough, putting backspin on the volleys. And I also think I've heard some like coaches say, oh, you don't need to put spin on volleys and whatnot. But I mean, obviously what you're saying is it keeps, you naturally just will have a better backhand volley if you think about putting backspin on, especially the backhand volley. Because what I was going to ask you too is on the why are people's backhand, and maybe it's also their regular backhand ground stroke, but like why are people's backhand volleys significantly worse than their forehand volleys? Because it's even like talking to coaches on tour, they say like we try to target the backhand volley and all that. So I don't know, why do you think that it seems to be that the backhand volley is always weaker than the forehand volley?
I think it's literally weaker. I think it's just doing something one hand. When I'm hitting a one-handed backhand, I feel way weaker than hitting a forehand.
Yeah.
But if you slice it, like if you took your racket and you held it like you were chopping something, and you just smashed let's say the side fence with the leading edge of the racket, you'd feel pretty strong, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about a backhand. You just chop in the fence. You'd feel pretty strong. But if you turned it to face, if you turn the strings to face the fence, that wouldn't be as strong a move.
Yeah, it's true.
Because you'd be using a different muscle. So that chopping motion, as dangerous as it can be for putting too much spin on the ball, will make the stroke far stronger. And even if you're up here, you can look like you're chopping something, and you can come in like you're chopping it. And then as you get a little better, you can close the racket slightly. But when you get that down, you will feel stronger, and you won't, the stroke will be so much more structured too. Because if I go like if I do a chopping motion, right?
Yeah, it's good.
That I don't. It's not like the harder I do that, the more my arm wants to extend. It's not like I've got so much speed that my arm wants to I can't hold this momentum any longer. I can just do a nice short chopping motion.
Sure, yeah.
If I keep it close to me and I don't extend too far, and I keep that chop, I feel pretty strong right there. If you straighten out your arm, sometimes you'll feel a little bit weak, because especially if you straighten it too soon, then all the energy goes into the hand, and then that gets a little bit unstable. So another tip would be to hit those backhand volleys with a slightly bent arm and never let it straighten. And if it straightens after the contact, it'll be okay. But it's a good thing to like, good swing thought, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, you know, in doing that motion, I was also thinking similarly of the serve where, you know, if you pretend, if you just like pancake the ball versus chopping it like that, which of course you're going to pronate eventually, but it's way more powerful. So I don't know if maybe that's kind of a similar thought there, but you just thinking like that, you get way more power. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. I guess in terms of one more area, maybe just one or two questions, is footwork. Any basic, you know, flaws that we're making, or like, yeah, just how should we think about our footwork?
I would say people should try to be comfortable playing off both legs. You know, backhand, you're going to do it a little bit less, but it's still very important to be coordinated enough to be able to play forehands, backhands off your right leg and your left leg. And then as you're moving around, then you can start to, you know, it'll kind of happen naturally where you just play off the leg. That's going to help you out. You know, it's going to help you to be balanced. So that's important. And it's not a modern thing. You know, people have been doing this forever. If you look at some old footage from the 40s, people still playing open stance. So don't listen to anyone who's like, my coach is old school. He only wants me to play close stance. It's like, how old school is he? Like from 18 something. So you need to be able to play off both legs, and that's just gonna help you to be more coordinated as you're moving around. And then the one thing I like to say, I get people to do, like my little saying, is make the end of the shot the beginning of your recovery. So if you're running wide for a ball, as you finish the shot, be in the perfect position to then push back to, you know, the middle of the court or wherever. And I think that tidies up the stroke. A lot of, you know, it's obviously hard to explain here, but tidies up the stroke, and obviously the recovery is a lot better. But I've always found that people's balance as they're hitting a shot is always a lot better when they think about finishing in a place to get back quickly for the next one.
That's good stuff. Good stuff, Tom. Tom, I want everyone listening to, you know, to know like where they can follow your stuff, and if there's anything, you know, in specific you want to shout out that you're, you know, doing these days. So yeah, if you could just let the audience know about that.
Well, I have my YouTube channel, TPA Tennis, and you can find me there every week. So, you know, make sure you subscribe and check that out. Leave me a comment, all that good stuff. But I also do video analysis, so people can sign up. Either can have an individual analysis, it's the one-time stroke analysis, or you can sign up for an unlimited analysis, and you can send me as many videos as you like. And we start with a Zoom session, and then we just send videos back and forth. So I have quite a few people in that program, and we get stuff done. People make a lot of progress doing it. So I really love, you know, really love doing that. So it'd be great if anyone interested in what I'm talking about wants to sign up, we can do that.
Awesome. And then in terms of your website, I guess that's
at tpatennis.com.
Yeah, tpatennis.com. And then I see there's video analysis as well, so I can link to that. Perfect, Tom. Yeah, that's great. And also just wondering if there was anything else that, you know, wanted to mention that we haven't covered today, or any like last parting thoughts before we adjourn.
No, we can do this again on a different subject. I've done a coaching guide to help coaches to coach more effectively, and it's actually on a lot of stuff that's not technique related.
Nice.
You know, making sure my essential, it's called the Essential Skills Tennis Guide. So it's starts off with the 5 essential skills are attitude, anticipation, decision-making, technique, and evaluation. And I think as a player, we need to be able to understand how all of these go together to be able to, play the right shot at the right time and to just keep improving as players. So maybe next time there's something we can talk about.
Yeah, awesome. Glad you're willing to come back after my terrible puns. But yeah, no, that's great.
Okay.
Well, definitely enjoyed speaking with you, Tom, and thanks for all the great knowledge. And definitely everybody check out TPA Tennis on YouTube and also tpatennis.com, as well as the stroke analysis options in the top menu bars. So, Tom, thanks a lot for coming on to the podcast. Really enjoyed it, and looking forward to speaking soon.
I appreciate it, man. You got to do your own video analysis. Let's get this. Send me some videos and I'll analyze it.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll do. Thanks,
right.
Tom. Take care.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks.